Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this podcast is being recorded on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. This is the home of the people of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Mississauga people. And now the Chippewas of Nawash and Saugeen are the keepers of this land. And as someone with settler ancestors, I want to continue to learn about these cultures and unlearn some things and continue to also learn about my settler ancestors and why they came here to what we now call as the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario, Canada. If you are new here and wondering who I am, I'm a Canadian yoga teacher. I'm a mom of three. I'm also an entrepreneur and someone who really likes to continue to ask questions and learn. And that's why I'm really grateful that you are here today listening to the podcast, because I get to ask a lot of questions about yoga, running a business, how we deal with all of the things that come up in life. And each and every week, I get to talk to amazing people and I get to share it with you. So I'm so excited that we are here together, learning together. And all of this is made possible for today's episode because of OfferingTree. This is a software that I use in my own business because it automates everything. The bookings, payments, Zoom links, reminders, and so much more. And we have a podcast listener discount code for you over at offeringtree.com/Shannon if you are looking for a software that helps you to automate things in your business, or if you're looking to build a website. Today's episode is also brought to you by Pelvic Health Professionals. So I founded Pelvic Health Professionals back in 2019 because I wanted a place where movement educators like yoga teachers and healthcare professionals could collaborate and together learn the most up-to-date information regarding pelvic health. Visit pelvichealthprofessionals.com if you want to join us or if you want to look around at the different resources that we have there. And because, I look at a lot of things through a yoga lens as a yoga teacher, that's a huge focus in there. There are a lot of yoga teachers, and we're really looking at how we can connect yoga with the benefits that it offers for our pelvic health. So check out pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Now, this entire podcast, all of our episodes up to this point, they were made for you, the yoga teacher, because I get how it feels to be in the real world as a yoga teacher. You leave your yoga teacher training, and there's so much more to learn beyond that point. So I wanted you to have a place where you can connect to other yoga teachers, to ideas and information while you're busy doing all of the things in your life. Now, today's podcast episode really came out of something in my own personal life. I had a close friend deal with a cancer diagnosis this summer. She'll know if she's listening who that is. I'm so happy to report that she went through surgery and all of the things and is now cancer-free. And I'm so grateful. And then I got thinking, wow, we've never done a podcast episode about cancer and how it impacts us as yoga teachers, how we can work with yoga students who are in the cancer community. And that's where today's episode was born from. So we know that the World Health Organization lists cancer as one of the leading causes of death globally. It's responsible for nearly 1 in 6 million deaths in 2020. Millions more are diagnosed and survive cancer annually. So I learned in this podcast interview, I think the statistic is it's 47 or 48% of people experience cancer at some point in their life. So that's half the population, and chances are we're supporting someone who has been diagnosed with cancer. So it's a really prevalent disease. It's also on the rise. As yoga teachers, the chances of having someone in our class who is dealing with cancer is very high. And we might just want to know how to support that person, or we might want to even expand it to work more and more with this population. In today's episode, I am so excited that Tyla Arnason is here to talk to us about teaching yoga in the cancer community. She's an accomplished yoga therapist who's been named a top 10 yoga instructor in Calgary, Alberta. That's here in Canada, in case you're wondering where that is. She's spent the last 15 years working in partnership with the University of Calgary's Health and Wellness Lab in developing protocols used in programming for the cancer community and the research that they support. Tyla supports those with cancer, care teams, and yoga instructors through her specialized yoga therapy protocols, classes, and trainings. She describes herself, I love this, as a movement optimist, and her philosophy is that with classes tailored to the individual, yoga can be made accessible to everyone and all students can become more confident movers. In our conversation today, we talk about how do I keep students with cancer safe in a yoga class? How can I gain the confidence to work with folks in this community? Tyla also addresses specific questions about supporting students with different types of cancer. And we talk about students who may be using compression garments or the impacts of post-treatment meds and much more. I learned so much from Tyla, and I cannot wait to share this conversation with you. We'll dive in a moment, but I also want to tell you that I'm hoping that we can collaborate a little bit more with Tyla in terms of offering a yoga series inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. So I'll keep you posted on this. It's a thing that I threw out to Tyla, and Tyla is seeing, like, will it fit her schedule? I'd be so thrilled if it did, because then we could really focus in on doing a yoga series that was specific for people who are dealing with pelvic cancers. So keep that in mind. Let me know if you're interested, and I'll keep working on that with Tyla, and I would let you know right away here. You'd hear it here first on the podcast if that's happening. Alrighty, let's dive in and learn from Tyla here today. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Tyla. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, I got looking at our podcast interviews, and we've never talked about cancer as an entire podcast episode, and it's been 6 years, and I was a little bit shocked that we haven't talked about it. So I'm really glad that we get to dive into that. But before we do that, can you tell our listeners what's the work that you do and who do you do it for?
Okay, sure. Most of the work that I do is in the cancer community. I teach yoga therapy classes for people with a cancer diagnosis, as well as for their support persons. So if it's beneficial for them to bring someone along with them, that's great. We welcome those people as well. I work in collaboration with the University of Calgary, so I am sometimes creating yoga protocols that then get used in research, generally by like a master's student who is doing their thesis on a cancer-specific study. I taught for 15 years at Wellspring Calgary, which is a incredibly beautiful, peaceful cancer center here that people can access free of charge, that provides a variety of programs. It could be art, journaling, how to make a will, movement classes, yoga classes, dance classes, gardening, like everything that you could possibly think of. We have a gold mine of a place here for people to access. And I think even better is that it's a place where just people don't have to experience that journey alone. And so I have worked there for 15 years, and I just retired from there last spring. What else? Sorry, what else do I do? I'm just trying to remember. I offer a Yoga Thrive teacher training. Yoga Thrive is the kind of background program that I work for with the University of Calgary. And so the researcher that I work with, Dr. Nicole Koulos-Reed, and I partner up and offer teacher training for people, for already certified teachers who would like to work in their cancer community. And then outside of all that cancer community work, I also actually have a niche in yoga and golf. So I'm a yoga for golfers instructor and a golf fitness instructor.
Oh my gosh, I saw that in your bio and I was like, wow, I love it. Someone who's also multi-passionate.
Yes.
What got you into this work in the cancer community?
So actually, I was a brand new teacher, like brand new. This was back in the day before we had credentials and designations of being a yoga therapist. And I I dealt with a lot of severe chronic pain, which kind of is what led me to yoga. And I had really just finished my initial teacher training. It was a 300-hour teacher training. And I was really enamored with one of the teachers who knew so much about anatomy and so on. And so she actually said, "Would you like to come and do some learning in the cancer community and teach some classes?" And not knowing how little I knew in that time, I was just like, "Sure." And I went and quickly realized how little I knew. But that's kind of how it started. And I have taught ever since that first week.
That's amazing. I love it that it was, the suggestion of someone else like, hey, do you want to do this? So tell our yoga teachers, what are some of the things that you wish that you would have known? Like, let's say from the very start, we're teaching a general group yoga class, and someone comes to us and lets us know that they have a cancer diagnosis. Is there anything that you wish that you would have known early on, like sort of how to respond to that and that first initial conversation?
Yeah. So I think that there's a long list of things I wish I had known, but at the same time, I think that how it organically unfolded for me worked beautifully. Um, I, you know, I was never too overly confident. And so that allowed me to stay humble and to stay curious and to really recognize that I was not a cancer expert. And even now, I still, people will say that, call me that, and I'm not that. I am constantly very aware of referring out or um, asking people to go back to their medical professionals for more information. I think that's a really important thing for yoga teachers to understand. Sometimes I think in the yoga communities, for me, I find it especially so in the mainstream community, we get a little bit too confident in what we know and suggestions we may give. And so I would just exercise caution around all that. Um, Personally, because my sort of strength as a yoga teacher is very much the physical side of the practice, I wish I knew more about biomechanics and understanding load principles. Um, that would have really helped me, and not even just in the cancer community, but generally as a yoga teacher. I think that understanding biomechanics for me is actually more important than knowing anatomy. Um, and then specifically to cancer, I think that what teachers really want to understand is that every single diagnosis is different. And you can have two women of the same age, the same type of cancer, the same treatment protocol, and their experiences will be vastly, vastly different. And so, again, that's another thing for me because I love, it's 16 years later and I'm more curious than I ever was. So I think that when you understand that, you never get too comfortable. You always need to keep learning, keep listening. I think if you want to be successful in the cancer community, your best trait will be as a good listener.
Do you, in terms of like what we say when someone says, I just found out that I had cancer and you're getting ready to teach a yoga class, do
Mm-hmm.
you have any ideas of what we would say at that moment?
Yeah, so my classes have all been cancer specific. So everyone coming to me has a cancer diagnosis. But for sure, and we talk about this a lot in our training, but language and the words you use are so important. And I know that you've talked about that in previous podcasts too. Like, first of all, my initial reaction would probably just be to say thank you for sharing. We have to get away from kind of the fear-mongering language, like, oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. So I say things like, thank you for making the effort to come to class and move, and thank you for sharing that information with me. And I always try to, and not just in the cancer community, but I think because I'm a movement optimist, I really think that I see everything as an opportunity. Um, and I have many, many students who would say that cancer has been a gift for them. They're finding themselves in yoga studios that they might never have gone to previously. But I think also from a teacher perspective, if someone comes up to you and says that, it may be a good idea, depending, if it's just a drop-in class, you may keep things a little more subtle and superficial. But if this is someone who you think you may be working with, it would be a really good idea to, start gathering information like, is this, are they a cancer survivor who's several years out of treatment? Or is this something quite recent and perhaps they are experiencing the grief and shock that accompanies a diagnosis? So it's really learning to ask the right questions as well. And I think that sometimes yoga teachers, we could do ourselves a service by sitting for a moment and really considering what information do I need to gather in this moment. Because we don't need every single answer. And sometimes it's the most important ones. Um, you know, if they're about to start a yoga class, you may need to have an understanding if they have a port, if they have something attached to them, an ostomy bag, or I wouldn't specifically ask that per se, but that may be information that I'm trying to unravel. But timeline is quite important as well.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you wish that yoga teachers understood about cancer in terms of how they can keep their students safe who are in that class? So let's say, whether we're teaching to one person who's shared with us that they have a cancer diagnosis, or like you do, work with a group of people, what are some of the top things where you're like, yoga teachers kind of need to know these things?
Okay, I'm going to give this answer. I know some teachers feel this is not feasible. I feel that it's our responsibility to make it feasible. I'm a big believer in doing a health intake. And so there's not a class I teach, whether it's in the cancer community or outside of the cancer community. In 16 years, I've not taught a class without having my clients fill out a health intake form. And I think that's really important. I think that our students are coming to us with needs. And when we are familiar with those needs, doesn't mean we need to be an expert by any stretch. But at least we know, do I need to refer out? Do I need to ask more questions? Do I need to modify and make this practice more accessible? Understanding inclusivity. And then, of course, broader than that, to keep their students safe, I think they need a body of knowledge. If they know they have someone with cancer coming to their class, do some learning. Like, if they're wearing a sleeve, why are they wearing a sleeve? What is that about? What is lymphedema about? There's a few key areas that I find most prevalent in students as far as side effects and impacts of cancer and its treatment. And so I think it's really worthwhile for teachers to have a body of knowledge. So I think it's 43% of women and 41% of men. I might have that backwards. But it's, 40 something percent of women and men will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. So we are having folks with cancer in our mainstream yoga classes. Not everyone has a Yoga Thrive program where they can go to a group class. And then, of course, people in rural settings, we want to have well-educated teachers in those environments as well. So it's gaining some background knowledge, just as you might for someone with scoliosis, or, you may not become an expert. Maybe that's not your niche, but I think having like a working knowledge. I actually wish that there was a module on cancer in every teacher training because it is so prevalent.
Yeah, almost half of the population, it sounds like. So
Mm-hmm.
if there was a module, let's see. Let's see if some of our yoga teacher trainers out there, how long would you think, okay, that's the basics, but at least you have some intro to it. How long would it be in terms of hours?
Well, our teacher training program is 4 days and it's 40 hours.
Okay.
And we feel that that is enough of a base knowledge for people to be able to keep someone safe and to have enough knowledge to go forward and decide. Like, a lot of teachers come to our training and they're like, you know what? I know there are people with cancer coming to my classes. I would like to be a little bit more knowledgeable and know that I'm doing my due diligence in this community. And so that's enough for those people. They may never intend on teaching specifically in a cancer community. And then there's folks that want to come and they do. They've had an impact in their life that is very meaningful to them to turn around and be of service in that community. And so they will take our training and then maybe dive in a little bit deeper. Not necessarily even with another training, but start teaching someone who has cancer, learn from that experience, and then just keep continuing to grow that.
And so what do you think in your 40-hour yoga teacher training that you do, what are some of the key things where people walk away and they're like, wow, I didn't know this, or wow, this is really, people need to know this and understand this as yoga teachers. What are some of those key
Yeah.
things?
So first of all, I'll say, and I don't want this to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I am so proud of our yoga teacher training. It gets absolutely incredible reviews. And as I said, some people just go away going, wow, I feel like a way more confident teacher now. But I'm so proud of it because the way I've slowly built it up, it's got some really strong modules within our training. And so, and not to mention, I have a world-renowned researcher as my partner. It's just incredible. She was actually just given an award called the Killam Award for her work in cancer and exercise research. So really proud of that. And we've just built a very strong program. I've built it around some of the main things I've seen over the years. So that would be lymphedema, neuropathy, pelvic health, which I know is a big, big passion of yours, pain, and then, of course, kind of putting it all together with an understanding of the nervous system. And there's more to that. We look at constructive rest and relaxation and breath work, of course. And then we also allow for every teacher to bring their gifts. Like perhaps there's a teacher that's really got a really great knowledge base with mudras or chanting. They can add some of that into their classes as well. Like we're just giving them kind of a model. our teacher training, also, I give every class 12 weeks of class plans that we've been using and that have been used in research. So we feel pretty confident about that as a starting base, and then really learning to grow those class sequences from there. But you walk away well equipped with keeping people safe. Just to go back a little bit, one of the most important things I think I would say, I know I did say making things accessible and modifying, but I think the ability to unpack poses is probably one of the most important things, because I will have, say, 15 people in my class, and every single pose looks different, completely different. Some people might be on a chair, some people might be on the floor, some people might be at a wall. And those are things that can happen when a health intake is done and when you know what someone's specific needs are.
Can you tell me what that looks like when someone shows up and they say, like, I have lymphedema, I'm wearing like a compression, whatever garment, and what how you might modify a pose for someone like that?
Sure. So first of all, I will say that many people won't say, I have lymphedema. So this is another reason why it's great for teachers to understand, what does that sleeve really mean? And how can I not single that person out? Because clearly they have not come to tell me. As soon as I see that someone has not come to tell me something, I know that maybe they don't want to be singled out, or maybe they would prefer to speak in private or over email or something. So the first thing is to understand, what does the sleeve really mean? And then getting an understanding of that whole loading principle, and recognizing that you have no idea. No matter how much knowledge you have no idea where they are in that lymphedema journey. And so really exercising caution. Less is always more. And it's okay to take a step back and build the right approach. So, for example, a really simple thing to do, if I have, say, plank in my yoga sequence, and someone walks in. Now, my classes are not drop-in, but pretend that this could be a mainstream studio. Someone walks in, well, instantly I know, okay, I don't know how much full body loading they can do on two arms. And so I will just flip plank on its back, and we will practice plank lying down, activating our muscles upwards towards the sky. And I will often have people say, like, wow, I've never practiced it like that. And I'm actually working harder doing the recline version of it, because plank is plank. It becomes old hat, right? So it also teaches you how to just freshen things up. And, you know, so you have to really be able to change things quickly on the fly. And I know that I see in your, I visit your Facebook page a lot. I love your group. And I see conversations a lot about, should we bring written class plans? Should we not? I have a written class plan at every single class I do, because mine's actually a spreadsheet. I'm a little bit type A, but it's because I have a section. So here's the pose we're doing. Here's what props could be used. Here's what modifications might need to be made based on the people in my group. And then here's things I may need to remember. And so, my students really appreciate that I know that about them, because sometimes they forget themselves, and I'll remind them, like, oh, you might want to back off a bit or change this up. So that ability to really think quickly, adapt things on the fly. And I think that comes from a strong understanding of unpacking poses, which is something we do a lot of in our training as well.
This is what happens when you leave a 200 hour, I think, where most people in a 200 hour have been practicing yoga for a while. And then for me anyway, I went out to teach in my community and all kinds of people had many, different needs in a yoga class where poses needed to be modified a lot. And I think that's a real gift. So
it is a gift.
This is good to know that that's included in your training as well. Connected yoga teachers, I'm popping in here for a moment to tell you that we just did a live Q&A with Eddie of OfferingTree. And so I'm going to include a link to that in the show notes because I think if you want to see a couple of examples of websites that were created with OfferingTree, and you also want to hear the latest updates that are being released this month, October 2023, and you just want to get a feel for who is this company and how do they really show up for yoga teachers, that is all in that video. I love the engagement in that video. It was so fun to get real live questions from people who are wanting to get their videos online or set up email automations or create a website. So I'm really excited that all of this is in that replay video that you can watch at any point. I'll share probably the YouTube link with you in case you haven't checked out our YouTube channel. It'd be great if you also subscribe to our YouTube channel. There you'll get the podcast. Some people listen to the podcast on YouTube apparently. And if ever we get to the point where we share more videos, it will be happening there. If you're wanting to check out OfferingTree, you watch this video or you just want to go check it out right now, we have a discount code for you. It's over at offeringtree.com/Shannon. Alrighty, let's get back into our conversation with Tyla. You talked about neuropathy. Can you tell us what that is and how you might see a modification for someone who's coming to yoga and dealing with that?
Yeah. So neuropathy is, I'm certainly not an expert on it, but it's essentially where damage has been done to the nerves. And a lot of times in my classes, I see it like nerve endings, like fingers and toes. But it can certainly be in other parts of the body. I've worked with people who have had neuropathy in the groin area. And so it's a disruption to the system, and people can be impacted by it in many different ways. Probably the one that we see the most is where there's tingling in their extremities. I have several students who actually have it. It starts in the toes, but it goes right up the lower part of the legs. And so balance is impacted. The ability to kind of get proprioceptive feedback can be impacted. I said balance, I think. Just that sensing. And so even going from being down on the ground, maybe you're sitting or on hands and knees, to getting up will take much longer for someone who has significant neuropathy. There can be a burning sensation. There can be a lack of temperature sensation. And so with respect to yoga, I think it's like I slow things down a bit and give people time so they're not the very last person all the time. Try to make it more inclusive. Some people may have to wear shoes inside the yoga studio because their toes literally can't touch the mat or the block or the wall. I have a couple people who wear like those swimming shoes on their feet. And then, of course, when you consider loading again, you want to be really mindful because they may not necessarily feel the pain if they have that lack of sensation. So you want to be really mindful about even things as simple as tabletop and having the toes and ankles flexed. So, you may work flipped over for a while. You may, you will work very gradually with people. But yoga, there's a great opportunity to work with people with neuropathy. Not only that, I think I would just dogleg a bit to say that a lot of folks with neuropathy also will experience depression. And that's certainly what I have seen and what I've read. And I think it's because it can be quite a debilitating experience. And there's not a lot of answers for it yet. Sometimes we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know when it might come on. Doesn't necessarily happen immediately after treatment or during treatment. So there's lots of question marks with neuropathy, but again, that less is more approach is very helpful. Can I just add too that I would really suggest that building that confidence back in people with neuropathy is a game changer and really helps them recognize. I will never, ever forget the day someone was out in my hallway at the cancer center, and I went to see them. I was just about to start class, and she said, "I shouldn't be here. I can't move at all." And I just said, "Oh, you're the perfect person to be here." Because she had such debilitating neuropathy, and she was told that she would spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. And I don't even know, we're probably 5 years since that day. And she texts me from BC and she'll tell me, "Tyla, I just walked 5 kilometers and I can't believe it." And so it can be a game changer when you can help with their confidence as well.
Let's chat about when a healthcare professional lets someone know that right now they can't do any yoga. And I want to highlight and say, like, I think there are a lot of misconceptions around what yoga is. I think that people think, okay, you're going to this class or you're going to like stretch and move quickly sometimes, or, be in a heated room. And so there can be some contraindications for certain yoga classes. In that moment, I'm like, oh, there's so much to yoga that isn't about the movement. So tell us, how do you respond when someone says, "I'm not allowed to do yoga now because my healthcare team said no, or I'm recovering, or I've just had a surgery," or all of
Mhm.
the things? How do you
Mhm.
respond?
Well, depending how well I knew them, if we have a lighthearted relationship, I would say, if you're breathing, you're doing yoga.
Right.
Um, but I would basically just let them know that I have worked with people in hospital beds and chairs, and, essentially that we can do yoga anywhere. Um, However, I really appreciate getting a better understanding of what your contraindications might be, because yes, there are contraindications. And so I think that some of the big ones for us are, well, the one I always check in with is if someone's anemic, that is, it is extremely hard to, you wouldn't want to add in exercise of any sort. And I know that yoga folks don't like it when we refer to yoga as exercise. So I just want to make it clear that in the research world, it's all under the exercise umbrella. So that's why sometimes I say exercise. Um, I actually try not to use the word exercise with my students at all, because I want them to just embrace the idea of movement more so than, specific guidelines. Um, but yeah, I think it's an understanding. So our big ones are severe fatigue, anemia, and severe pain. And those would be things that we would want to refer back and get an understanding. What is it okay to do this? And is it okay to do this? I've worked with people who are at risk for spontaneous fracture. Tumors are so big that their bones could just break. And we still find ways to have this practice and have it assist, because we know that it's the psychosocial aspects, the spiritual aspects that people are benefiting from as well, which is what provides such a great opportunity for yoga versus, say, something bigger moving like traditional exercise. Maybe they can't pick up a dumbbell and do stuff right now, but they can probably sit in a chair and do some breath work. Surgery is another big one, of course. There is a timeline. We need to respect that. Perhaps we can't connect right with a surgeon directly. They're busy folks. They're not necessarily going to give us any time. But I've found over the years, there's some really great ones that kind of help you get people on a path. But generally, you're going to go by the timeline that surgeon has imposed. And sometimes it's different. It can be the same surgery, but two different surgeons have different guidelines. So I usually try to go to, whatever the longest ones are. Sometimes I can do arm movements and leg movements, but I can't, stretch through the torso because I've had tram flap surgery or reconstructive surgery or something of that nature. So definitely want to honor those contraindications and get a good understanding. And really, I think for teachers, it's about not being afraid to say, I'm sorry, I'm not more familiar with that, but I'd love to learn more. Can I, connect back to your physiotherapist or to this person who may have a better idea? Recently, I had a woman come into class. It was a funny situation because the cancer center, we had moved into COVID. The cancer center had moved all of my classes, which was 6 a week, down into one and put it over Zoom. So I had 100 people in my class.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a little bit uncomfortable with it, but it was people I've known for years and years and have, administered health intakes for. And so I had to change the way I teach, make it really gentle. But anyway, I had someone come in and tell me that they have compression fractures in their spine and that, they have just they're awaiting tests for osteoporosis and so on. They're also a cancer survivor. And so I was quite uncomfortable with them staying in the class, but the cancer center person and the person who monitors the classes had said that they could participate. And so I kind of changed everything, took out any form of rotation, put everything into a chair, focused a really lot on breath work. And because I didn't want to say like, no, you must leave now.
Right.
They had made the effort, right? So, and then I spoke to them after class and just said, okay, look, I think we need a game plan here. I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure that I'm safe. And we just need to know how to go forward. And so then I asked her to go back to her doctor and back to her physiotherapist and get more information that would help me. And then, they ended up reaching out to me and we kind of all collaborated to come up with the best plan. But the plan was, and this is what makes it scary in drop-in classes and such, no yoga for, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks. Absolutely no yoga. And so, as much as we want to say, oh, yes, we can make it so accessible, sometimes there are times when you just have to say, okay, we just need to take a break. We'll come back to it. We can stick with, lying down, breath work, intentional relaxation. So it's a big, long answer to a multifaceted question. We have to consider a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's such a good example of how it's whenever we can connect with that healthcare team in whatever way. And you and I are both very lucky that we live in Canada and healthcare is, I'm crossing my fingers here, so far accessible to everyone and free right now. Although there are some, if you're a Canadian, please, let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
And if we can form those connections, that's really great. No matter where we live, and ask those questions and and lots of healthcare professionals, you said they are busy, but if and when they can connect, they definitely can add so much more to that conversation.
And can I add one more thing, Shannon, that I think might be useful for teachers is that sometimes, like, a lot of doctors in our area know about our program. A lot of oncologists and surgeons know about our program. So I'm very lucky in that regard. But there's going to be a lot of centers that know nothing about Yoga Thrive. And as you said, well, is it hot in there? Are you doing flow? Are you doing power? Like, there's a lot of things they won't know. And the flip side of that is that I think a lot of doctors have the misconception that yoga is the most gentle thing ever and that we're not actually ever working hard. And so what I have done in other situations, I had a woman come in. One of my students just decided to bring a friend. She wasn't registered. And that's not how our program works. But this woman always comes late to class. And so it wasn't something that I could, like, I was already 10 minutes into teaching. I was teaching week 12 of a 12-week session. So I have progressively built these guys up to work harder and harder and on different things within the capacity of what I know based on their health intake forms. Well, she brings her friend in, and it's a core focus class. And her friend lies down, and the first thing I see is a big distended belly. And I go into inner panic inside. And then I'm like, okay, just take a breath, Tyla. Like, you know what to do, adapt your class. And so I very quickly turned things around, took the focus off of core, and pardon me. And when I had the chance to speak with that woman, she had just had surgery on her abdomen. And so she wanted to come back. I was immediately going into week 1 of the next session, and she wanted to come back. And so I just said, look, may I please have your email? And what I'd like to do is just type up a 2-liner. Send that. Could you take that to your appointment next week with your surgeon? And so she did that. And I just very briefly, because they have no time to read big, long things, said, this is what we do in our class. Is this appropriate? Well, turned out, no, not appropriate at all. She had a blockage that needed further surgery still that she wasn't quite aware of yet. And so it's just those types of things that you need to be really mindful. But that approach of also like, hey, can you just take this piece of paper to your surgeon? Maybe I'm never going to get that connection to that surgeon, but I can go through them. And so I'll work that way sometimes with physios and occupational therapists, that sort of thing, that maybe I'll never get the chance to talk to them, but we can work via the client.
That's a great tip. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because we know the rate of cancer is really high, if some of our connected yoga teacher listeners who are yoga teachers, if they have a cancer diagnosis, what do they do then? Do they tell their students? Do they continue to teach yoga? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you've had a lot of discussions in your group and on your podcast about, what do we do as yoga teachers when we're experiencing pain, when we're not well, those sorts of things. I'm a big believer that we just be open and honest. I think there's this weird misconception in yoga that we're like, not really human and we have to be perfect.
Right.
And, I don't understand that. So I have no problem telling my students if something's going on, you know? I mean, I'm not in there talking about myself all the time, but I am very open with my students. I get a lot of migraine headaches, so my students know that some days I may not demonstrate as much or that sort of thing. I think that our students appreciate knowing that, I remember one time someone actually said to me, it's really nice to know that you're just not this bubbly fit person just waltzing into class telling us to do this, this, and this with no understanding of where we're coming from. And so I think, yeah, we don't need to overshare, but we can certainly share. We are human too. And it is those experiences that bring us together. And certainly what we see in the Yoga Thrive community, we have this really incredible opportunity to bring these people together and do these specific cancer specific classes. And one of the best things that comes out of that is having that common thread, and that shared experience. And so I think it's just going to make the exchange, the energy exchange, even richer. And then also maybe they'll understand if you need to get a sub or you can't show up for 3 weeks in a row or something of that nature. They'll have the background knowledge to understand. From the teacher perspective, okay, that was a little bit more from the student perspective, but from the teacher perspective, as someone who I've never had a cancer diagnosis, but I do live with a chronic disease that can't be cured. And so I would say that I really find that being of service is healing. And so I'm not saying work yourself to the bone at all. I'm not saying that, especially you need to give yourself the grace and compassion if you need space for treatment or that sort of thing. But I'm saying that when we give of ourselves and we're of service in a community with higher needs, I find that it comes back to us as healing. And I think that it's very fulfilling. So when people aren't well, I think they can get that from sharing the gifts of their unique experience with their students.
This is so great. If our connected yoga teachers want to reach out and either support someone who is in the cancer community, or if they want to learn more about how they can support them, how do they reach or where do they find you?
Well, so I'm only on Facebook under my name, Tyla Arnason. And then it's a big long name, Yoga for Golfers, Yoga Thrive. But there's not many Tylas, so I'm pretty easy to find that way. I also have a website called the Yoga Effect. Honestly, like if anyone just Googles Yoga Thrive, they're going to find me that way, or find the program and then find me. It'll be I'm on the university's website as well. And through any of our teachers, we've trained a lot of teachers. Most are Canadian, most are even in Alberta, but we actually have teachers from all over the world now. We have teachers from Ireland now. I think we have one in France, teachers from the East Coast, the US. COVID has actually been a gift in that way because it kind of forced me to take the training online, which at one time I said I would never do. But it's worked out because it's actually removed the travel and financial barrier to allow more people to take the training without having to travel.
Is it online now completely still?
It is online right now. We're very flexible. Nicole and I, we do not offer this teacher training as it's not a part of our business per se. Just whenever we have enough interest, we say, sure, we'll offer another one. It's a passion project for us. So we don't have any regular time period. But I did just see her at our Drive for Thrive golf tournament on Monday. And she's on her way to Copenhagen, actually, to present on cancer and exercise. And she was just saying, okay, yes, I have some teachers too that want to be trained. So I think we're going to look at possible fall dates for the next one.
I'll make sure that we link to your website and your social media in our show notes. And yeah, just huge thank you for taking the time to talk with us and for doing this work that is definitely, rippled out into the world, helping people who are in the cancer community as well as the teachers that are supporting them. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's definitely something that fills my heart and my soul. And it's, I didn't even know, I didn't intend it to be a niche. And it's turned into this beautiful thing that, I keep saying to my husband, we got to retire. We got to retire. And then I say, but actually, I don't know if I really can. So
is that because you're thinking that you don't want to, or you're not sure? You're not sure what that looks like yet?
Oh, I totally could retire. I have so many hobbies. I could retire tomorrow. But when I think about not teaching in that population and in that community, I just can't imagine it. It's such a gift for people with cancer to trust their body again and to move and to see what they're truly capable of. And, they just want control back, and movement provides that greatly. And so that would be a hard gift to give up. So I don't know. I go back and forth.
Well, that's amazing. You know that you're doing the work that you're really here to do right now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Tyla, for all of this amazing information. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing also to support people who are dealing with cancer, and also to support those who are helping out their friends, family, and yoga students or patients. This makes such a difference in the world. It makes my heart happy when I can connect our yoga teachers to information that's going to help them, to then in turn help their students and just ripple out. So if you are listening to this podcast today because you are dealing with cancer yourself, or you have a loved one who is, or you have a yoga student who is, my heart goes out to you. I hope this is helpful. If you have questions beyond this, reach out and ask those questions. Send them to us in some way. You can send us a voice message on our website, theconnectedyogateacher.com, and we will find the answers for you. I promise. That's our main job over here, is what are the questions that you have as yoga teachers, and how can we connect you to that information? All of the notes for today's podcast are over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/347. And there you can also leave a comment or a question. Maybe you want to share something that you've learned about dealing with cancer or working with those who have cancer, and you want to share it with our audience. That's a great place to do it because everyone can see it there. Or maybe you have a question that you want to share. As I mentioned earlier, I really want to see how we can get together in person on Zoom and invite Tyla in to teach a yoga series where we could see what a class, like a 6 or 7 week series, might look like for someone who's dealing specifically with a pelvic cancer. So it's an idea that's out there. I don't have dates yet, but as soon as I find out, I will let you know. Right now, we are wrapping up another yoga series with Sarah Garden, who's also a yoga therapist, yoga for endometriosis and pelvic pain. You can still join live, catch the last few live classes. It ends at the beginning of November. But also, if you are listening to this and it's way beyond November, not to worry. There's a replay. Last night's class was amazing. It's class number 4. If you're looking for it, it was all about rolling out our feet, our quad muscles, our glutes, and around the pelvic floor. Oh my gosh, I went to bed feeling like amazing just in my lower body. It really released so much tension there. So if you are working with students who are dealing with pelvic pain, if you have pelvic pain yourself or endometriosis, check this one out. Head over to pelvichealthprofessionals.com to sign up for that. It's also included in our membership, so you can sign up for the whole membership and get access to that. And you'll get access to so many calls. We just talked about diastasis recti with Manira this month. Next month, we're talking about stress, the nervous system, and the pelvic floor. In December, we're going to be talking with Tyla Arnason about pelvic health and cancer specifically. And then in January, we're going to be really digging into the connection of feet and the pelvic floor. So to check all of this out, head on over to pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Thank you so much to our team over here making this podcast possible, Suzanne Crunch and Sinead. Oh my gosh, these people are just powerhouse human beings out in the world, really spreading the love, caring for people, and caring about the work that they do. And they do fantastic work. And it brings this episode to you, dear listener. And also a huge thank you to you, because without you listening, this podcast would not even exist. So I'm grateful that you have spent the time here today learning from Tyla, hanging out together. And I hope that you're taking this out into your week in some way, into the work that you do in some way, and sharing it with the world. And I'd also like to close out today's podcast episode with my regular question. What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?